And seniors. Well, here we are again. So this is Randell. Hey, so what did you do all summer, Danny? What did you do this summer, Sandy? In 1978, Grease became America's favorite musical. But there was one scene that never made it to theaters. Cost Paramount over $200,000 to film. The producer called it the Martin Scorsese scene because it felt so dark and violent. The scene was so intense it made people forget they were watching a musical. Studio executives panicked. They said it didn't belong in their happy movie, so they buried it. Here's what happened in the scene that was too raw for 1978 audiences. Grease didn't start out the way most people remember it. Back in 1970, Jim Jacobs, who once lived the greaser life in Chicago, and his friend Warren Casey, decided to write something that felt raw and real. What they created wasn't a sweet love story. It was bold, loud, and full of sharp edges. Their version of Grease opened on February 5, 1971 in a small Chicago nightclub called Kingston Mines. They only had about $200 to pull the whole thing off. $70 of that went to a beat-up 1951 Chrysler they nicknamed Grease Lightning. The rest of the show was full of street talk, cursing, fights between different neighborhoods, and rough jokes. The characters were Polish American teens from working-class Chicago, and the way they spoke felt like real life. They didn't hang out at beaches like in later versions. They went to places like Foster Beach, and instead of the T-Birds, the gang was called the Burger Palace Boys. It wasn't shiny or polished, but local people loved it because it was honest. As one critic put, they were real. Then in 1972, two New York producers Ken Weissman and Maxine Fox saw the show and realized it had potential, but only if it was changed. They offered Jacobs and Casey a deal, but with conditions. The language had to be cleaned up. The violence and dirty jokes had to go. The romance needed to become the center of the story. By the time Grease opened on Broadway on June 7, 1972 at the Broadhurst Theater, it was a totally different show. They added new songs. The characters were no longer clearly Polish American. Most of the rough stuff was taken out, and yet it became a huge hit. It ran all the way until 1980. 3,888 shows in total, which made it the longest-running show in Broadway history. Up to that point, big names like Barry Bostwick, Carol Damos, and Adrian Barrow were in the original cast. And over time, future stars like Peter Gallagher, Patrick Sees, and even John Travolta stepped in. John Travolta didn't just show up and take the role of Danny Zuko. He shaped it to fit his own image. After his breakout hit Saturday Night Fever in 1977, Travolta had power. Producer Robert Stigwood offered him the part as part of a 3-movie deal, but Travolta said yes only if they rewrote the role. He didn't want Danny to be too harsh or rough like the Broadway version. He wanted him to be more charming, more of a heartthrob. This wasn't just about creativity. It was a smart career move. Another star, Henry Winkler, had been offered the role first but turned it down because he didn't want to play another leather jacket guy after Happy Days. He later said he regretted that choice. Travolta also pushed for Olivia Newton-John to play Sandy. He said she was the dream girl that everyone liked. Olivia Newton-John wasn't even planning to act again. After her first movie flopped in 1970, she almost gave up. But in 1977 she ended up at a dinner party hosted by Helen Reddy, where she met the movie's producer Alan Carr. He was still searching for someone to play Sandy. They had thought about Carrie Fisher, Susan Day, Marie Osmond, even Anne Margaret. But when Carr saw Olivia at that party, something clicked. Olivia was 28 and worried she was too old to play a teenager. She even asked for a screen test, but to make it work she agreed to a lower salary in exchange for star billing and the chance to change her character's background. Instead of being American, Sandy became Australian, so Olivia wouldn't have to fake an accent. That tiny detail changed everything. Stalker Channing played Rizzo, one of the boldest characters in the film, but she was 33 years old at the time, and that made her the oldest cast member playing a high school student. She had to fight hard to get the role. She beat out big names like Carrie Fisher, Lorna Lough, and Lucy Aries. The director, Randall Clyer, was so worried about their ages that he made the actors go through something called a crow's feet test, a close-up to see if they looked too old on camera. For Channing and others, they softened the focus on their faces during filming to hide the lines. But Channing had something special. She could show the pain behind Rizzo's sarcasm. And when the producers wanted to cut her big song, "There Are Worse Things I Could Do," she fought to keep it in. That moment became one of the most emotional parts of the movie, and nobody questioned her age after that. Jeff Conaway's story is full of strange twists. He was born on October 5, 1950 in Manhattan and started acting when he was just 10. He was in a Broadway play in 1960, and later, in 1972, he played Danny Zuko in the original Broadway run of Grease. But when it came time to make the movie in 1977, he didn't get to be Danny anymore. That role went to Travolta. Instead, Jeff became Kenickie, Danny's right-hand man. The director said the reason he got the part was because of the strong chemistry he had with Stalker Channing during auditions. But here's something even more surprising. Jeff was married to Rona Newton-John, Olivia's sister. So they were a real-life family while playing friends on screen. Jeff also had a music background. He'd been in a band called 312 when he was 15. That helped him fit right into the rock and roll greaser vibe. The rest of the cast came together through huge open auditions in 1977. The team wanted actors who didn't feel fake or too polished, just people who could bring the 1950s to life. Day Khan, who played Frenchie, stood out because she could sing live and use slang that felt natural for